Okay, hi everyone. My name is Kristen Lien, and my faculty mentor is Dr. Andre Carrington from the English department. So my research is titled Animated Queer Alternatives, Exploring the Queerness of the Non-Human and Race in Contemporary Children's Animation. So to begin with, contemporary children's animation. So my research is really concerned with how animation in this particular moment is telling us about our understanding of queerness and its relation to race and identity. In the last 10 years or so, we've seen a huge boom in LGBTQ representation. And my research really wanted to investigate why that is, but also what is this telling us about how we're understanding queerness today. So some background about just queer animation studies and animation studies in general. Investigations into queerness and LGBTQ representation in animation began around the 90s. And although it began sort of just looking at like same-sex desire and trans or genderqueer characters, it sort of evolved instead to look at the queerness of animation itself as a medium, which, as scholars have discussed, is able to challenge our understandings of categories of species, gender, and sexuality. And in this case, queerness is in the non-normative sense, which is meant to refer to anything which is transgressive or violating the realms of what is considered normal behavior in society. So there's a lot of background in looking at how same-sex desire and gender play has sort of been looked at or analyzed and presented in animation. However, in a lot of this analysis, they've overlooked race, which I think is sort of a critical lack of analysis because representations of people of color have been appearing in animation since its very beginnings. And oftentimes these representations of people of color were appearing alongside also these animal characters and these sort of non-human characters who are sort of playing with the boundaries not only of who is human, but also who is a boy, who is a girl, etc. So my research question is really concerned with how do race and the non-human specifically contribute to how queerness is understood in animation? I'm seeking basically to bring together queer animation studies with a deeper analysis of race, paying specific attention to the animal, alien, and other non-human characters. This is because other scholars, such as Zakiya Amon-Jackson and Mel Chen, have discussed how the non-human itself is a racialized category that can produce queer intimacies. And I argue that the non-human is central to how animation depicts and understands race because, depictions of animals have been part of animation's history since its very beginnings. So my research will look at these three contemporary animated children's shows, Steven Universe, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, and Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. And looking at these shows, which have sort of been lauded by critics and audiences for their LGBTQ representation, but instead of looking at sort of this identity view of queerness, I will be instead looking at characters and moments where what is considered normal in terms of discrete categories of humanity, race, gender, and sexuality are violated. And I've located three characters from each show, or one from each show, who I think exemplifies sort of these rupturing moments where a character transgresses what is normal. And I sort of look at them also as non-human characters, and their non-humanity is what facilitates this violation of the boundaries of normalcy. So in my analysis of Steven Universe, I look at Sujilite, who is a minor antagonist in Steven Universe, who is voiced by the American rapper, singer, songwriter Nicki Minaj. And so I'm looking at Sujilite as being representative of a kind of racialized, gendered humanity that is generally associated with Black women. And I've sort of located this characterization not only in how she's drawn, which is with very animal-like features, big lips, comically large eyes, this sort of strangeness that sort of makes it clear that she's not human, but she's also not an animal and not quite inhuman in the way other characters are. And additionally, I've looked at how she's characterized within the narrative itself. And she's characterized as brash, abrasive, excessive, and basically just unacceptable, even within a show that is about aliens and is about characters and people who already are not normal. But somehow within her proximity to a kind of Black female sexuality and Black female humanity, it sort of, Sujilite is then disrupting what is acceptable and what is normal. And I think that's also facilitated by her non-humanity. And so in my treatment of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, I'm looking at the character of Double Trouble, who again is another antagonist, but rather than being sort of overtly racialized, Double Trouble is a shapeshifter. So throughout the show, Double Trouble transforms into various characters of various races, genders, species, and their whole almost purpose within the show is to deceive characters and to kind of be not even themselves most of the time. So they're sort of being like embodying a performance of identity, gender, race, and sexuality. And their non-humanity is what facilitates, obviously, this constant transformation. And She-Ra sort of understands this as their understanding of queerness, and it's facilitated by their alienness. And it's sort of a critique of authenticity, an authentic identity that is based on discrete categories of identity. So in my final treatment of Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beast, I'm looking at the character of Yum-Yum Hammerpaw, who is a recurring minor character who is sort of this ally for the protagonist, who in the final season of the show is attacked by the antagonist and is transformed from an anthropomorphic cat into just a regular real world cat. And in the world of Kipo and Age of the Wonder Beast, where mutants are the norm, Yum-Yum Hammerpaw turning into a cat is basically the reimposition of species hierarchy in this world of strange, wild, untethered kinds of humanity. So Yum-Yum Hammerpaw is now suddenly so completely away from human that now the rest of the show has to grapple with where is the line between human and non-human, and what does it mean then to have this kind of hierarchy placed upon not only people but also animals. And that sort of, I think, contributes to this almost treatment of a new kind of colonial hierarchy that I think the protagonists ultimately fight against. So in conclusion, my research is coming from a place where there is a sort of lack of analysis of race in queer animation studies. And so my research is wanting to combine a treatment of looking at queerness in contemporary children's animation with a deeper analysis of race and the non-human. And I expect to find that these shows present deviant or non-human forms of being as a way of putting our knowledge of queerness, our race, and race into practice, and that ultimately queerness in these shows is tied to the racialized and non-human body, which facilitates these kinds of malleable forms that violate the realms of normalcy. So I just want to acknowledge my faculty mentor, Dr. Andre Carrington, the Mellon Undergraduate Fellowship, my cohort, and my friends and family for supporting me and my research. Thank you.
Well done. That was